My name is Jerry Rothkoff. I'm managing attorney of Rothkoff Law Group, an elder care firm serving seniors and their loved ones in both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Welcome to our continuing Zoom interview series on the who's who of the front lines of elder care advocacy. Today, we are privileged to have Philip Echevarria, who is the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Alzheimer's Association throughout New Jersey. So Philip, welcome today. Much appreciated. So thank you so much for your time. And I think I would love to get your perspective as to where things are with the Alzheimer's Association and some of the issues related to COVID and those with Alzheimer's and dementia, and what the priorities of the Alzheimer's Association in New Jersey is currently. And we'll get all to that important stuff. But let's start with this. Philip, let me tell you, can you tell our audience a little about yourself and maybe a little bit about what your duties are as the Director of Governmental Affairs? Because that's a very abstract term, and many people don't really know what someone who deals with governmental affairs does on a daily basis.
Sure. So as you said, I'm the Director of Government Affairs at the Alzheimer's Association. In my previous lives, I have been the main lobbyist for the Hospital Association and for a healthcare system. I've always found myself in healthcare to some degree. In my past lives, I was working on clinical trials for Alzheimer's. I was an EMT. I always felt giving back and being a part of your community was what made your community great when everybody pitched in. So in my role, we work with our elected officials, both on the local, state, and federal level, in order to make sure that our concerns for our constituents are heard. And we really do believe it's the partnership with our organization and our volunteers and our elected officials that really produce change in the state. So for example, in New Jersey, we're currently working on a piece of legislation that would create a public awareness campaign for Alzheimer's within the Department of Health. And what this would essentially do is help those learn more about the disease, and not just the individuals who have the disease, but for healthcare practitioners, for people in the judicial system, for our first responders, because we do believe that care doesn't end once you walk out of your doctor's office or hospital. It really extends to the community without. And when everybody has a better understanding, we're able to help each individual a bit further.
So I like what you talk about giving back. What actually attracted you to working with the Alzheimer's Association, as well as those with dementia as well? What attracted you to this field?
Yeah, so growing up in a Latino family, caring for your family and caring for your community has always been something that I've been brought up that you should do. And we cared for my grandmother throughout her Alzheimer's. Now, this was a woman who helped raise me. She was an active member in her community. She took care of other children when they didn't have a home, and she needed family to help her, and we were there to help her. Unfortunately, this isn't the story for everybody. There's a generation of individuals who have shaped the world around us, and as a society, we should do our part and come together in their time of need. And I do find that our collective voice really make change in the state and change the policies that impact our lives. Here at the Alzheimer's Association, it's the voices of our volunteers that drive our policy changes in New Jersey and protect some of our most vulnerable seniors.
So let's talk about that, because even like elder law, many people get involved in elder law or senior advocacy because of a personal experience, whether it's a family member who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or in your case, a grandparent. And like you, I enjoy this area of law because it would be considered doing well by doing good. And that would be similar to your sentiments that you expressed just so well just a few minutes ago. So let's talk about, you talked about our most vulnerable residents, our most vulnerable citizens. We're not doing so well now, are we? What I mean by that is that, let's talk about how the Alzheimer's Association, and specifically what your role as Director of Government Affairs, what are the Alzheimer's Association priorities? Because I would argue, and again, this is just me talking. As an advocate for seniors, I would argue you're an advocate for our most vulnerable population as well. And I'm a consumer advocate for seniors and those with disabilities, many of which have Alzheimer's or related dementia. And if I had a scorecard, our grades, I mean, we as a society, especially in the midst of COVID, we're not doing very well. Is that fair to say?
You know, I don't think anybody could have predicted something like this to enter our lives and have to adapt to it as quickly as we did. And I think through all this, what it did do was shine a light on the cracks that were already there, and how quickly things can get exacerbated due to us not fixing these problems earlier. I mean,
right. So, sorry to interrupt. Go on, Phil.
No, you go.
No, I mean, I agree with you. And I know it's like I'm preaching to the choir here to a certain extent. And so this, I mean, I love what you're saying, and I agree 100%. Because the cracks already existed, and COVID just exposed those cracks, I think, for all to see. And we have to do something. And I don't believe it could be business as usual going forward, whether the nursing would deal addressing the needs of nursing home population or addressing the needs of a home and community-based population for Alzheimer's as well as their caregivers. So that said, let's talk a little bit about what is the Alzheimer's Association, what's their role to play in this, and what are the Alzheimer's Association priorities moving forward in light of COVID, and as you said, what appear to be large cracks in the overall foundation of caring for seniors.
Yeah, so when all this first came out, we already had our legislative priorities that we were going to pursue. And for me, what was going to make New Jersey a more dementia-friendly state. And like many people, we didn't anticipate something like this occurring. New Jersey residents who live in nursing homes, there is an overwhelming amount of individuals in those homes that have Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. So when this started coming around, the Alzheimer's Association turned on a dime and came up with a set of recommendations that we believe can help the outcome of what's going on in these nursing homes. Everywhere from creating a surge activation plan to prioritizing PPE, testing for all residents and staff, and making sure that reporting on the virus, I'm sorry if it's a little noisy back in my background, but making sure that reporting is going on so that the residents of New Jersey not only know where these outbreaks are occurring, but if their loved ones are impacted as well. And it's with these recommendations that we believe more lives can be saved and families can sleep easy at night knowing that their loved ones are being protected.
So how at this point, let me just say that, it's very sad to see what's going on, especially related to socialization issues, or more importantly, lack of socialization, where seniors are isolated due to COVID. So can you talk about some of the services, in addition to the lobbying and advocacy skills and services, some of the services the Alzheimer's Association provides on a regular basis to help alleviate or reduce that social isolation that many of our most vulnerable population have been going through related to COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think like many organizations, especially those who do provide services to their constituents, trying to figure out how to transfer something that was done in person and into a virtual environment and get those services into their home was something that we had to adapt to. Our programs and services have been working tirelessly to make sure that they are still getting to their people and making sure that their services are now in the homes to make sure their lives are better well suited during this time. We have a wide range of programs and services, and unfortunately I don't have the list in front of me, but everywhere from 10 signs to look for Alzheimer's, way to manage as a caregiver, a loved one with Alzheimer's. We really try to cover the continuum of care from education resources for caregivers and individual resources. Again, I apologize for the sound in the background.
No problem.
Individual resources for those who are recently diagnosed. As your company does very well, you recognize that it's not just a one-stop shop, it's a long continuum of care, and we need to make sure we're not only addressing the individual who's diagnosed, but the family and caregivers who are the overwhelming people who take care of those individuals is usually family. So make sure that they're educated as well to handle this is crucial.
To access those resources, let's say we have a caregiver spouse whose husband was either recently diagnosed with dementia, or we have a spouse who maybe is dealing with another spouse's dementia for many years. You talked about these programs where the Alzheimer's Association had to pivot to make them virtual for obvious reasons related to COVID. How does an individual access these programs? Where do you start?
So our website is a great place to start, but I will plug in our hotline that's open 24/7. It's staffed by social workers with master degrees education that can not only help guide you through the process, but will also connect you with your local chapter, which in turn will connect us with the local programs and services team who can help guide those individuals. If I make a plug for that number, it's 1-800-272-3900. And again, that's open 24/7 and is available to everybody free of charge. That is the first stop to get connected with those, because as we have discussed in the past, New Jersey is, interestingly enough, cut into two parts of the state with two different chapters working in that state. Now, we work in tandem with our other chapters seamlessly, and we always make sure that our constituents are being served. But in order to make sure that you're connected with the right place, calling that number will connect you to the right programs and services team.
What could, and there, the Alzheimer's Association relies a great deal on volunteers, am I correct?
We like to say we're volunteer driven and staff guided.
All right. So, what can if the individual consumer or advocate wants to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association, are there opportunities for consumers to get involved? For example, I mean, of course, all the programs or fundraising events that the Alzheimer's Association has done over the past are now most likely, if they have not already been transitioned to virtual for at least the remainder of 2020, for the second half of 2020. Can you talk about some of those volunteer opportunities, whether it's fundraising and the like, that individual consumers, or it could be long-term care communities themselves, the staff, or individual elder law firm offices can get involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think that we are an organization that the biggest thing we're known for is our walk to end Alzheimer's. And you're absolutely right. We will still be walking to end Alzheimer's, and we will still be having them, but it will be a virtual walk where individuals can walk in their own communities, but still come together to celebrate and honor their loved ones and all the reasons that they were walking for in the past. For me, on the advocacy and policy side, we work with what we call ambassadors, who we match up with different federal representation to state and local elected officials as well. And the goal of that is not everybody wants to hear from the lobbyists on a regular basis. And we do think that stories of their constituents in their community is what elected officials remember when they're on the floor voting. When they are pushing a piece of legislation, they're not thinking of me. They're thinking of the person whose mother had Alzheimer's and they were the caregiver, the granddaughter who was there with her grandmother throughout all the time. And these are the stories that help change policy in the state. So we have volunteer opportunities in advocacy and policy. Programs and services have a ton of volunteer opportunities as well. Some people like a program's role where they get to help our team create programs in their communities, and they're able to work alongside of their constituents and make sure that those who maybe didn't have access to different programs now have it in their own communities, led by their community. So it's not just a fundraising role for us. We do have volunteer opportunities in many facets throughout the organization.
Wonderful. If I had to, and we'll put all of the website and the toll-free number when this video is posted on the social media platforms, we'll make sure that that information is available for anyone to review and follow up on. So Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that information. Going forward, what would be considered the Alzheimer's Association's #1 priority for the remainder of 2020 into 21 as related to advocacy, governmental affairs, what you're in charge of in New Jersey? You mentioned the educating frontline healthcare providers. Would that be the priority, or what would be considered like #1 that you want to accomplish over the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months?
So here in New Jersey, it's definitely a two-pronged approach. We have our public awareness campaign that we think will help people from the continuum of care, from when you walk out of a hospital to working on your will to making sure that you're getting the proper care in home. The public awareness campaign will drastically help individuals throughout the state. Our second approach is going to be our long-term care community recommendations. And here in New Jersey, the governor's been doing a great job tracking cases throughout the state, but a little bit more needs to be done. As you mentioned, social isolation is a huge thing that these long-term care communities are facing. So making sure that we're creating guidelines to close that gap, make sure that families can see their loved ones. Also making sure that personal protective equipment is available, and proper education. As we said before, this is something that no one anticipated, and we're constantly having to learn and adapt. And it's important to make sure that those working in those facilities are educated properly so that they know how to best handle this situation and protect themselves and the residents in there as well. So we'll be taking a two-pronged approach in order to address a lot of these issues going on in the state.
Well, thank you very much for enlightening both myself as well as consumers as to what the Alzheimer's Association does and what are some of the priorities. So with that, I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you for your continued advocacy. We need more individuals like you who continue to advocate for a very vulnerable population. So best of luck. Have a good rest of the summer, and keep up the great work that you and the Alzheimer's Association do on a daily basis. So thank you so much for your time today, Philip.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working together in the future.
Sounds good. Have a great rest of the day.